I saw on Twitter you said about Newcastle made maybe an error not changing that, or they'd already changed their accounting period time, was it? So they couldn't, in the last 5 years, so they couldn't change it again.
Well, it was just one way. Yeah, it was one way. I mean, other clubs have done it. Villa did it. So Villa in I think it was May, maybe April, moved their year end from the 31st of May to the 30th of June. And we know now that that move, that extra month that they gave themselves, was so that they could meet PSR. And they've done it because they've sold a couple of players, 3, I think it is, and they've hit their PSR target. But they would have, if they'd not moved that accounting period, it looks like they wouldn't have been able to meet PSR. So the idea would be that Newcastle could consider moving their accounting year end to the 31st of July, give themselves an extra month. There are some technical reasons why it's not a great idea. The problem is, under Companies House, you can only do it once every 5 years, and they've already done it in 2020, and then they moved it back in 2022. There are ways around it, but I wonder whether the Premier League would really go quite crazy with them if they were to start doing the sorts of tricks that would be required to do it. You can do it if you incorporate a new subsidiary, and then you say, well, we're changing the accounting date to align with this new subsidiary. So it is possible, theoretically. Whether they could do it in practice, I don't know. But we'll see over the next 24 hours if they're doing it, probably. Or maybe they'll just take a hit for PSR.
And then you touched on Villa there, that they're past PSR following their sales. Are they likely to face financial hurdles again next season after what they've gone through over the last weeks and months?
They've got really big problems next season from a PSR perspective. So they have the positives of better revenue because they're going to be in the Champions League, so that's great. And they've also got a new kit deal, so that's great. They'll have some commercial upside, that's great. So they'll probably move their top line by, in a base case, maybe 50 million quid. So that's great news. The problem is that they're going to have quite a bunch of additional costs because the wage bill presumably will go up on the back of Champions League. There'll be a number of players that have got Champions League clauses. There'll be a number of new signings. And so you would think the wage bill is going to go up quite considerably. And then on top of that, they're going to add quite a bit in terms of amortization costs from the new signings. So we know already that they have brought in 4 players, and all of those 4 players will add amortization cost. So once Matsson's done, Maatsen on his own is going to add something like £8 million to the amortization line, and the rest of them maybe same again. And they're going to buy more players. So they're going to have quite a substantial hit to the costs. And that's not even talking about all the other costs that go with more games and, just a more active club in a season. So they are likely to have more operating costs generally. So the net position on the profit and loss might not actually be that exciting. And then there's the biggest issue on a 3-year rolling basis in terms of the way PSR works is you drop off the third year back. And in Villa's case, that third year back was a very profitable year because they sold Grealish for 100 million quid and 100 million quid of profit because he was a young player, an academy graduate. So that drops out, which means that they've got a big hole to fill for 24-25. So you would expect that what will happen is they will look to try and find young players to sell in the year to try and make up the shortfall. They may need to sell quite a lot of they might need to make quite a lot of profit, maybe as much as £100 million of player trading profit.
And then So one of those players that Aston Villa sold was Amari Kellerman to Chelsea. The Premier League is apparently monitoring transfers that may breach regulations about clubs acting in good faith. Do you think maybe the Kellerman deal and the Maatsen deal as part of that is one of the main ones that have really pushed the Premier League to take that action?
I think the bigger you go, the bit in size, the more they're going to get looked at. Nobody's going to look at Lewis Dobbin for 10 million quid. You know, it's very hard to say that a 10 million pound young player is overpriced, because it's very, it's a very difficult, subjective issue. So it's very hard to say that he's overpriced. But once you start getting to 20 million pound plus for players who are 18, they've almost never played for the first team. And clearly people are going to say, is there something odd there? I think likewise, if Minte was swapped for best part of 40 million quid, that's a deal that is likely to get scrutiny. But I think the rules are not set up particularly well to block these deals or to challenge them. Very, very difficult, I think, to definitively challenge any of those deals that have been done so far, and probably also difficult to challenge Minte as long as the documents are not incriminating. So the big issue here is similar to the Juventus situation from a couple of years back, where they swapped a couple of players between themselves and Barcelona, and there was a couple of other deals as well. And they may well have been okay in that scenario, but for the fact that they had to disclose documents to the authorities. And some of those documents disclosed ultimately specifically said that the swaps were designed to circumvent financial fair play and the amortization rules. And it's actually there in the notes. So if you look at the reason, for example, for Paratici's worldwide ban, part of it is relating to his handwritten notes, and they're in the public domain. You can Google and have a look at the handwritten notes that he has. It's on Juve headed paper, and it basically says that the prices were inflated, and therefore he had nowhere to go. If you have a situation where your documents are incriminating in these circumstances, then you can expect consequences. So on the face of it, I think all those deals are fine. But if they were to be probed, and if any of the clubs had been silly in their communications and said things that they shouldn't have said, then in that situation, they could give themselves a problem.